Hi, I'm Tim Harford, the author of The Logic of Life, and my debate with Dan Ariely, the author of Predictably Irrational, has moved to video. I'm not used to video, the Harford household isn't set up for it, but I'm going to do my best. Here in the garden, the sun is shining on London. Well, the last thing that Dan asked was, what would it take to convince me that people are sometimes irrational? Well, that's easy, I'm convinced. I'm perfectly convinced, thanks to the brilliant experiments Dan has done and other behavioural economists have done, that people are sometimes irrational. The problem is, what do we do with that information? Especially when we know, as for example John List has proved, that some of these laboratory results just evaporate once you take them out of the laboratory. But I don't want to be unfair to Dan. Even if the laboratory results are perfectly stable, perfectly predictable outside the laboratory, there still remains a problem of the things we can't test in the laboratory. So the real thing that worries me about what Dan said was that laboratory experiments, or experiments in general, are the only way that we can find out something for real. Now that is really worrying if it's true, but I don't think it is true. Dan talked about controlled experiments of new drugs, new medicines, and they're great, we all depend on them. But that's not the only way to find out about our health. There haven't been any controlled tests of the effect of tobacco on your health, for example. We don't know that smoking is bad for you through laboratory experiments. I'm sure Dan would agree smoking is bad for you, gives you heart disease, gives you cancer. Or the effect of diet, vegetables, red meat, fats. None of this stuff is stuff we can learn from laboratory experiments. We have to go outside and look at other data. And when it comes to the quest to find out that smoking is bad for us, actually that data has taken years and years, decades, to accumulate through careful work by epidemiologists. Now, this isn't just a rhetorical point, because the sort of work I write about in The Logic of Life, data detective work to try to work out how the world works, what makes us tick, is very much like the epidemiological work which taught us that smoking is bad for you. Let me give you an example of how difficult it can be to generalize purely from a laboratory experiment. So take the problem of racism. How are we going to test the problem of racism in the lab? There are things you can do, there are experiments you can run. In fact, one experiment I describe in The Logic of Life brilliantly exposed the problem of racism with a controlled trial outside the lab. It was carried out by two economists, Sendil Mullainathan and Marianne Bertrand. What they did was to generate 5,000 realistic-seeming resumes and send them out to real employers to ask for a job. And the only difference between one half of the resumes and the other half was that one half, at random, were given a white-sounding name. The other half, at random, were given a black-sounding name. Now that's not in the laboratory, that's outside the lab, but it's a brilliant controlled trial, and it proved something which is perhaps not surprising, which is racism is still a very serious problem in the American labour market. But what do you then do with that information? How do you go further? Because observing that some people are racist doesn't necessarily tell you how the job market will work out or the shape of our cities. For that, you need something other than psychology, something other than behavioural economics, something other than experimental work. You need a man like Thomas Schelling, Nobel laureate in economics. And I describe a very interesting piece of work Tom Schelling did in The Logic of Life. Let me show you this. This is a chessboard with black and white counters. And this was an idea Tom Schelling had on an aeroplane. He wanted to understand why American cities could be so segregated. So here we have pretty much at random, well it is at random, white counters and black counters. And this is a duplicate of Tom Schelling's experiment. Tom Schelling said, just imagine that all these people are slightly racist. Not badly racist, they're slightly racist. And all of these people, represented by counters, would like to have some neighbours the same colour as them. They don't want to be outnumbered, say, more than 3 to 1. And if they are outnumbered more than 3 to 1, they'll move. But let's just look at our board. Most of these people are perfectly happy in this mixed neighbourhood. But look, this guy, he has one black neighbour, he has 4 white neighbours. He's not happy, he's going to move. Okay, let's move him there. He's perfectly happy there. Okay, but now, let's have a look. This person, he's not happy. He's got 5 black neighbours, only 1 white neighbour, so let's move him over here. Okay, this person, 2 white neighbours, no black neighbours. He's not happy. He's going to move, say, there. This person, 3 black neighbours, only 1 white neighbour. You see, there's a chain reaction, so they're going to move. Oh no, he's not happy. He's got to move. I'm moving pretty much at random. I'm just looking at random for these people. There's nothing pre-planned about this experiment. Okay, 3 black neighbours, 1 white neighbour. Got to move. He's got to move. And you can see the chain reaction, the black and the white separating before our eyes like oil and vinegar. Now, that's purely a thought experiment. By the way, Tom Schelling's intuition has been confirmed by subsequent computer simulations. And if you want to understand segregation, you're going to have to do this sort of work, empirical work. Lab work is not going to bring you all the answers. So, Dan, my challenge for you is to tell me how we are going to take the insights of behavioural economics and integrate them into the economic mainstream. I'm not arguing now about whether people are rational or whether people are irrational. You're convinced they're mostly irrational, I'm convinced they're mostly rational. I don't want to argue about that. We agree that the others are sometimes right. What I want to understand is, given this lab work, given the insights that you've produced about how people are sometimes irrational, how do we then take those insights and apply them in the real world? What do you want us to do?